Thanks, Rita, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Temus. Especially warm welcome to Mike and his colleagues who traveled here from Pennsylvania. He just arrived yesterday, but his jet lag is still doing fine, so he'll be at top of his game later when he speaks. So, by way of introduction, Temus is slightly over 2 years old. We're a young organization, about 250 people. And we were set up as a digital transformation services company, which means that we set out to solve the challenge of digital transformation from end to end. We found that one of the issues for many clients is that there's a gap between having a strategy and executing and implementing it. And we set out to do that from what we call vision to value, which means that I have people in Temus that have a strong consulting background. I also have people with a strong technology background, and we put them all together and force them to work for the client. Sounds good in theory. In practice, it's always a challenge, but I think that's what we aim to do, and I think the clients really appreciate it. So to today's topic, which is about generative AI, we've all seen a lot of excitement. I was told that ChatGPT is the fastest growing service, not just digital, but service ever to be used by humans. It went from 0 to 100 million users in 2 months. Took TikTok 9 months, Instagram 30 months. Am I right, Mark? Right, that's what you told me. Yeah. And it's this rush for everybody to see how it can be used in both personal and professional lives. I've personally seen that. So I'm an avid badminton player, not a very good one, but I'm a very enthusiastic one. And then every Sunday, there's a new episode which is by this group of professional players based in the UK. And I was watching yesterday's one, and they said, look, see how AI can improve how you play. And they're advertising this AI where you can upload videos of yourself playing, and they'll tell you all your mistakes you've made. They've analyzed it. 67% is this mistake that you've made, and then this is how you improve. But of course, you can sign up for this at $20 a month. Right? It's a new app called Qlik. In terms of speeches, and I used to come from the public sector, we're finding that ChatGPT is very good at drafting speeches. I had to deliver a speech recently about a partnership between Temus and AI Singapore, where my colleagues very kindly got a few paragraphs drafted by ChatGPT, integrated very well. And the message there is basically it's not competing against AI, but it's working together with AI. Another experience which was also interesting for a different reason was one of my colleagues was retiring recently from his job, a senior level executive. And we wanted to have ChatGPT draft a tribute for him. And he came up with at least 10 to 12 paragraphs. And a couple of paragraphs cited that this person was has a very humble demeanor, was cited in Business Times for doing this, and the Straits Times, which are all Singapore dailies, for doing that, which was fine, except that the articles never appeared in Straits Times or Business Times. So it was not true. Hallucinations, I think that's the term for it. And interestingly, it just presented it so confidently. So lessons to know that sometimes you got to be careful, right? What you ask it to do, and you need to know the content it's yourself. Well, I think clearly for enterprises, it's changed how we look at things. I was chatting with Matt, and we were saying that two perhaps superpowers, right? That generative AI gives us, which is one, the ability to get insights at a speed and scale which is not possible for humans to do. And secondly, for it to be able to replace some of the work, even thinking work that humans have been able to do in the past. Right? All this means that you can, make real-time or near real-time adjustments to your businesses. I was very intrigued when I looked at Qlik's website and the impact you did on the Vancouver airport. You can quite well imagine, right? If your flights are going to change, how do you anticipate and predict for that and adjust for that? Secondly, looking at new ways of innovation and creativity because of the insights that we can generate. And the third, interestingly, is to be able to be much more empathetic with clients and staff, because it can be customized to the way you feel and what you need, which is funny, because you would have thought that humans are more empathetic to other humans, but surprisingly, because we are all different, we may want certain things at a certain time, or we may all respond to different approaches, and the AIs can do that now. So this all positions us, I guess, really an unprecedented point for us to consider what's the impact of generative AI. I think we're all very anxious and keen to see specific use cases. My colleague Hardeep is going to share that later, and we're going to have a panel discussion, and I'm looking forward very much to the insights and what I can learn from the rest of the panel members today. So hopefully you'll enjoy the rest of this afternoon. Thank you, everyone.
Look, first of all, I'm thrilled to be here. It is true, I got off a plane at 5 o'clock yesterday from New York, but I feel fine. Hopefully I look fine. Thank you for hosting us at this lovely location. I'm still enjoying the view. Just to build a little bit on what KC was saying, obviously we're at the center of data and analytics ourselves. And I was on CNBC Squawk Box this morning, and you can imagine whatever we asked them to ask me, they asked none of it. And they just kept asking questions about generative AI, and it's all the rage. And AI has been around for a really long time, and it's just pattern recognition, right? It's just we've gotten really good and fast at it, and ChatGPT really unlocked kind of the next wave of it. And the reality is it's here, and the talk about putting a pause on it, it's nonsense. Like, never in the history of the world have we stopped progress, right? People have lit things on fire, they've broken machines, they've done all kinds of things to try to slow it down. The reality is it's going to keep coming. And really the question is, what do people like us, what do we do about it? What do we do to make it more ethical, be more responsible, make sure that the things that you just talked about, the false positives or worse, bias in the information that comes back to you, isn't there? And I think we're at the cusp of that right now. And we're all in a very unique position to kind of influence where this goes, and whether it goes really to the dark side or whether it really becomes a tool that we can build on to make business and society better. I'm always an optimist, so I always believe in the latter, that we will ultimately harness this and make it better. And I think where we sit is we believe that it's our responsibility to actually make it better. And the way that we do that, a lot of our customers are corporate, and you talk to corporate CDOs or CEOs, and the last thing they want is their company information, their IP, anything confidential, like going out into one of these public, domains for generative large language models or generative AI models. So how do we do that? How do we control it? How do we enforce quality, lineage, all those things? And that's where at Qlik we spend most of our time, is helping customers unlock the power of their data, but do it in a very responsible way where, yes, you can get real-time insights, where you can use the data and get insights on it, but do it in a way that you can guarantee the quality of it, understand how those insights were built, white label everything. So it's not just, here's the answer, but here's the answer. No, oh, by the way, here's how we achieve that answer. Here's the foundational knowledge that we use to get that. And then the last thing I'll say about these, generative AI, yes, there's going to be some disruption. I use it, I maybe not to write speeches, but I've used it to write job descriptions for people. It's pretty easy, right? It's repetitive. That domain of knowledge is already out there. Like, there's, a job description for data scientists exists somewhere in the world. I don't need to write it from scratch. I think other things will be harder. And where we see it fitting in ultimately is an augmentation of the data and analytics professional that is today, but bringing the AI to the business users, and not something over here, not some white coat data scientist exercise where you take the data out of your analytics bucket, put it somewhere else, but actually streamlining it in a way that not only allows you to gain those insights and augment the experience, but then to take action on those insights right away. So, my pricing is wrong. Okay, like, don't wait to look at a dashboard and have some human being make a phone call to somebody in finance or IT to change it, but actually just push a transaction. Okay, I got it. It's pretty obvious. Let's go just change the pricing. It's too low, it's too high, put somebody in a different plan, et cetera. And that's where we see the world going. Kind of excited to engage with the rest of the panel today on everybody's thoughts and just sharing different insights, because we're all learning. We're all learning. We better learn at a really fast rate. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thanks a lot for everybody coming here. My name is Hardeep. I lead the AI engineering team at Temus, and I was told that there is a Qlik session, but we want to talk about generative AI because that's the talk of the town. So I decided, okay, we'll put together some slides, a high-level pack on how did we reach here, what happened in the history, and then a couple of use cases that will go at a high level. And if anybody is interested in a much more deeper discussion, we can have it as a follow-on. So start with where did it all start, right? So AI, as Mike was saying, is not new, right? It started in 1950s and 60s, and the word AI itself was coined by a gentleman by the name Marvin Minsky in that time duration. And then there was this another guy, Alan Turing. He was instrumental in the World War II. And he crafted something called as the Turing test, which was the gold standard for saying when AI is surpassed human level intelligence. And only recently with ChatGPT getting released, I think we have clearly passed that benchmark, right? Again, this was the first wave of AI, specifically focusing on symbolic AI and logical reasoning, right? Then came the era of rule-based systems. So we started thinking about how do we encode human knowledge in terms of rule and start making systems intelligent with this. So again, the epitome of that was when IBM's Deep Blue kind of beat this grandmaster Gary Kasparov. But again, this was the second wave of AI, and after some years of hope and optimism, it kind of subsided back again. Then the third revolution started, deep learning. This is the modern age of AI. This started back in 2010, specifically 2012. Started with this competition called ImageNet, which was basically recognizing images using machines. Over the years, there was very marginal improvement in the benchmarks of this competition. But come 2012, this gentleman by the name Alex created a network called AlexNet, which kind of broke this barrier by a 14% margin. And that was the third wave of AI starting. Immediately led into a lot of excitement in the world. People started noticing this technology, specifically in the image domain. On the language side, things started slower at this pace. But then came the era of around 2017s, when mostly the language models started becoming a thing of the reality. So I think the first point here is the algorithm started to learn how humans pay attention when they look at different parts of text, right? When they are reading a text, they kind of pay attention to different parts of the text. So this was a kind of a pivotal moment, this paper called Attention is All You Need. And post that, we started training these language models. First generation of these language models started with something we call as GPT. And these models were basically trained to just predict the next word in a sentence. And what people started realizing, and specifically this is coming from Ilya from OpenAI, that soon they realized that when a model is training itself to predict the next word, as it gets better in doing that, it starts learning some bit of the way the world works. If you feed in enough data at internet scale, initially we thought it's basically doing some kind of statistical correlations, but if you feed in a lot more data, something amazing starts coming out of these models. It starts behaving like, it starts understanding the world model. It knows the concepts using, basically, it has never seen colors. It is trained on text, but it can understand what color looks like, or how, or in what context do you use colors as well, right? So this is the real beginning of the modern wave, which we are very excited about, ChatGPT and all that, but these were the initial models. Then we are coming back to today, and again, there's a lot of things which has happened in the background, but just focusing on the ChatGPT. So 2022 end was the release of ChatGPT, and then GPT-4 got released really recently. Now, the special thing about this model, and this is the version 4, is that this model has been made multimodal. So till now, the way you would train a model is to just show it a lot of text. But now we have also shown it images and text. So GPT-4 has actually learned not just from images, or not just from text, but also images. So it is a step up over what we see in GPT 3.5 or GPT-3, right? And that's why this model is kind of a little ahead, and and it can do what it can do, right? And that's what amazing a lot of people. Another key feature they put into this model was something called as reinforcement learning with human feedback, or what we call as RLHF. So till this point, the models were there, but the latent information about this world model, we couldn't access that information. We had to train downstream models based on this to do tasks like basically finding the sentiments of something, or doing a basic Q&A. But with this technique, what they started doing is they started to tap into the model's ability and straight away starting asking it or giving it instructions in terms of what a human expects you to do. And the model started responding. And this is the way we got this new wave of ChatGPT kind of models, wherein we are interacting with these models like we do with any other human. We talk to the model, we explain it what we want, and then boom, comes the answer, right? So this is the landscape till now, what has happened. How are we using these models these days? There are a couple of broader areas of use case. The first one is where we call as a model as a language facade. So essentially, whatever task we used to do till now, in order to expose those tasks to a human, we will create forms or UI screens, right? Now we can actually use a very human way of interacting with humans, which is just through a language interface. Today we are doing it text, but nothing is stopping us from using the technology that a Alexa or a Google Home use. The speech to text and the vice versa is a solved problem already, right? So we can basically interact with these models using a human-like interface. So a lot of use cases are focusing on wrapping existing use cases with a human interface or with a language interface, what we call as a language facade. The other kind of use cases we can, because these models have kind of encoded this world knowledge, we can ask them to help us do certain kind of role plays in terms of customer service and all that. And I'll show some of those demos. Third key use cases are Copilot, which is basically the augmentation piece that we talked about. Very big in code generation right now. Like I have developers in my team who have started using it. Efficiency has gone up 3x, 4x. Market is talking about a 10x developer, which is basically allowing a developer to use these tools and then become like 10x more productive. And then the last one, which is like really, really recent, coming through open source, is making these models or giving these models the ability to orchestrate tasks. So there are some latest papers around what we call as auto GPT. So essentially these models, if you ask GPT some question, it can generate a list of tasks for you. Right now, what we are doing is we are doing one-shot learning. We ask it something and it gives us a response. But if we put this learning in a game loop and take each point of that plan that it came up with, and then allow it to analyze that and kind of go into a loop and do that information, it truly becomes like a personal assistant. It can actually start responding. So the example for this was somebody asked this model to create an evening plan for his wife's birthday, and the model could actually come out with booking restaurants, taking her to a yacht trip, and then buying jewelry, although that's not what he wanted. But then these models can actually they have started showing us a glimpse of what all is possible. Is it perfect? No, not by any means. We have safety issues that we have to engineer through. But again, they are showing this early signs of what this technology is capable of doing, right? So with that, I would get into some demos. Now again, here in the demo, I'm not going to run anything live. I have run some of these things. I'm just going to showcase. So the first one is where what I'm showing is basically a Q&A bot, which can read any kind of a document in background and help you answer those questions. Typically, the way we have done search till now is we basically take a search query, and then you would be getting results, and then you have to open each results and manually synthesize the answer out of it. So the last mile of search was never complete. With ChatGPT, that last mile is also kind of now covered. So in this use case, if you can see that this is a document of a research report written by an analyst on NVIDIA, and it has a lot of details about NVIDIA, what it's doing as a stock, how are the price doing. Yeah, how are the NVIDIA, oops. Apologies. Okay. Yeah. So Yeah, so this is the research report. It is showing you various aspects of the stock for NVIDIA. Now, what we can do using a bot is we uploaded this report into this Q&A bot. It summarizes it nicely for us. It tells us the main points. It also prompts us what are the kind of questions that we can ask in this report. But then we go specifically, we talk about what are the various segments in which NVIDIA is operating. It gives us nice answers. It kind of goes in and starts talking about the different segments, the market shares and all that. Now, before this, with the Google kind of approach, you would have to open this and find this information manually. Now, with a ChatGPT kind of a bot, this information can be presented to you as a ready-made answer. Now, what you see here is just a single document, but this is by no means the only limit. You can put a lot of documents, like hundreds and thousands of PDF files, or even web pages, or any other kind of Word documents that can allow you to then do a seamless query over this data and then get the results, right? So again, a lot of our use cases kind of get unlocked. The second use case I want to talk about is this role play agent. Now, again, in this case, we prompted the agent to act as a coach. Now, this is specifically for sales domain, where salespeople generally, when they talk to customers, they want feedback. And as a part of sales onboarding activities, they want to train the new people through some kind of a role play exercise. So here we have kind of prompted this model to act as a coach. So I told that model, okay, that you will act as a coach. You are going to go through a certain kind of concepts that you have to test. In this case, it's about value proposition of the customer, pain points, constraints, objections, and questions. And I gave it a scenario that you are selling smartphones and you have to convince the customer that this is the best smartphone you have, right? And we begin the role play with the AI, and it starts, okay, why don't you talk about the value proposition? I give a okay answer. I talk about some features of the product, but immediately it comes back with the feedback saying, can you contextualize this to customer, right? Can you make it more prevalent to what customer is really looking for? Then I kind of made the answer more nuanced as a human in this case. I talked about how the camera can help in their vacation to capture the moments, how they can use this phone the entire day throughout their day without worrying anything about the battery life. And then it's satisfied. It says, great that you have done good stuff. Let's move on to the next concept. We are talking about customer pain points. Now it prompts me that why don't you ask a question around customer pain point? I gave a very vague answer here, but it kind of pushed me again. It said that, okay, it's a great start, but you need to connect to the points of a customer. And this is all done by the AI model that's kind of coming with this kind of a nuanced feedback, letting you know that you have to really get good at talking to the customer. And it won't let me go until and unless I give it a really nuanced answer. And this conversation kind of continued. And in the end, it kind of gives me a summary of how I did, what were the strengths, and what are my areas of improvement. Now we can again mold this use case into different personas and different avatars, and we can kind of do this thing over and over again, right? Now the third one, a quick one, which I want to do, this is more nuanced. So basically, what we are talking about here is a customer service scenario, and we are trying to give bot a personality here, right? So what you can do is you can give this bot a personality. You can talk about what level of sophistication do you want to talk a customer at. So these are different levels. So if you are dealing with some old people, you would want to dumb down things a lot. If you're talking to more sophisticated user, you won't want to kind of give in more details. So you can set the level of sophistication. You can also set what kind of empathy do you want to portray when you are having these conversations, right? You can also set communication style, different kind of communication styles. You want to be humorous, you want to be kind of more textbook-like when you are talking to the customer. And then what kind of tone do you want? You want neutral, you want friendly tone, and simply also reasoning frameworks. Now, with all these parameters in, then if you give this bot any kind of a scenario, we can actually get into a conversation. So I started with the scenario of making it a travel agent customer service bot, right? And then it explained me, okay, I am this, and this is how I will succeed, and this is my objectives. We started a session of conversation with this bot. I asked it that I wanted to travel, and can you give me some kind of a plan to travel, and I want to do it with my kids. It came up with a decent reply. It quoted most of the places where there would be theme parks for kids, and kind of gave me some answers. Then I said, okay, I choose one place, Tokyo. Can you generate itinerary for me as a bot, right? And it is able to do that. And this is all being done in the kind of style or personality I have chosen. At this point, I decided, let me change some of that part, right? Let me do a little bit tweak, and from a very formal communication style, I said, why don't you become a little humorous in this? And why don't you increase the level of sophistication for this? And then and I asked it to regenerate the itinerary for me. And you can read it here in the couple of starting lines. You can already see the humor coming out, right? The bot is becoming nuanced. It is able to kind of embrace that style and personalize it messaging apart from being just a normal chatbot, right? And I just continued this conversation afterwards, right? So what I'm trying to show from these use cases is the breadth what can be done today with the use of generative AI. Now, this is by no means the exhaustive list. There is a whole lot of use case. I think education is one of the sectors which is definitely going to be disrupted. With this kind of a technology, the last use case specifically you saw, imagine that you can now tutor children's personalized way, right? You can have a learning style, you can have a way you talk to a particular child based on its learning needs, and maybe really tailor these kind of use cases for them, right? Again, customer service is something which we already saw. Again, for salespeople, when they go and talk to their clients, it's always good to have a briefing pack. Now, with the communication they had with customer on emails, over other channels, in team meetings, through the notes it has taken, we can all collect all that information and create a salesperson briefing pack for them, right? So again, some of the kind of use cases we are kind of coming up with here, right? Software co-pilots, again, this is the same thing that we talked about earlier. And again, these bots are really good at what we call as data democratization. I think this is where something like Qlik and making these bots work over Qlik and allowing a language interface into your data and removing the barrier of having analyst or SQL as a language rather than making English as a language is something where we can actually have that added advantage. Now, what we have shown so far is more unstructured data use cases, right? You can actually supercharge this with Qlik and you can bring structured data together with this, right? If you bring that structured data together, then you are gonna truly unlock the value of your data. Now you can combine your structured and unstructured data sets both together to unlock this value, right? And you can do all the things from all the dashboards that you have already created. You can converse with your dashboards rather than just seeing them as charts and dashboards, right? So I think there is a lot of power that generative AI kind of brings. It's just the start of this journey. I would say imagination is the only limit that we have right now. But having said that, a lot of work, a lot of engineering needs to be put in place to make this technology safer and robust for production use. And with that, I wrap it up and thank you.
I think before we head to the next topic, which is the Fireside chat, moderated by Binny, any questions for Hardeep around what you just discussed or shared?
What do you think are some of the biggest opportunities for the monetization of all of that capability and technology?
So again, a lot of these use cases are gonna have what we call as a big efficiency effect. So a lot of customers for us are already asking about it. In fact, just last Friday, I finished a prototype of a financial analyst for one of our clients, right? So which is basically taking a whole corpus of reports and then allowing them to cut down the analysis time a lot. Right, so this basically means the analyst can now really focus on the core and the difficult stuff, right? The analysis, if you see the analysis quadrant on the left topmost side is where you have all the factual information. This is something you can already automate with such bots. But where you are talking about market sentiments and all that, where a real human can kind of focus on. So I see a lot of efficiency plays as well as productivity gains and then kind of opening new revenue lines as well for some of these use cases.
Right, so shifting their employees into higher value.
Exactly, yes. So basically human augmentation is what I'll say in one line, yeah.
I have one for you, Hardeep. How would you recommend a client who's interested in this get started? Is it as simple as just signing up for GPT-4 and playing around with it?
Yeah, so it looks very easy because when we all sign up for a GPT plus access and we try to fire and it kind of gives all those results. But believe me, if you really want to make it production ready, there is a lot of things that need to happen in the background. Safety is one of the most critical things. You need to make these models safe. You need to make sure they don't hallucinate. They stick to your business boundaries. They don't utter anything in front of a customer that you don't want or you would be embarrassed to listen to, right? So there would need to be a lot of engineering that needs to be built around this. We will need to kind of prototype this use case first, put it in a pilot with certain set of customers, build all the engineering safeguards around it. Like it's similar to, like Matt always used to tell me, like airlines, when they started, there was like a lot of accident rates in airlines, right? And then we engineered this entire safety mechanism around flight safety and airline safety. And today it's one of the most safest means of transport, even safer than traveling in your own car. So I think the similar analogy applies to this space as well. We would definitely need to put all that engineering effort to make sure that this technology is safe and ready for production use.
I think that's a good point about safety. Mike was mentioning earlier, just in traditional analytics, the corporate customers concerned about leakage into the public cloud, for example. I think even more so when we talk about public sector, even more so when we talk about the higher value tasks here, right? Kind of like qualitative analysis, which is probably your differentiator. I have a question actually for the customers. Thank you all for coming. Just by show of hands, how many of you have already started exploring generative AI and what that means for analytics? Okay. Started exploring? Okay, good. So we'll count on all of you for some questions later on to the group. But maybe we can hand it off to Binny to kick us off with the fireside chat.
All right, Hardeep, thanks so much. I will look you up later for that sales role play. Going to be very helpful, right? Yeah. Personally, a test. We should probably do something with Temus, AWS, and Qlik and see how do we go and convince the audience here on why should they explore generative AI with us. But anyway, really lovely presentation, but I think it also really sets the stage, right? Like what Hardeep mentioned. Actually, generative AI, since 2017, it has already, researchers, the folks have been at it for years. It's only as of last year, Q4, it seriously came out of the stealth mode, and we finally find, hey, potentially there's some real way of applying it and using it in our day-to-day lives. And looking at the audience here, I'm not surprised. I'm hearing a lot of I think some of our teams are already working on it, on exploring the potential, which is why we are all here today, right? So don't be shy. This is a very intimate setting. Feel free to raise your hand, happy to walk around with, get a mic and ask any questions along the way. But just to start the ball rolling, right? Probably, earlier we were talking about, hey, we're already getting a lot of feedback from customers on how we actually apply it. We're still in the early days, right? We are all in the exploration stage. But perhaps we start with Mike, because you just came out of Qlik World. Just now we were talking about it, right? It was the first in-person Qlik World hosted in the past 3 years post-COVID. I'm sure you're hearing from customers around the world who traveled to Vegas to listen about what can Qlik do, and perhaps they might have some ask. Could you share with us what you're hearing from the ground from customers around the world with regards to generative AI and what Qlik is considering?
Sure. So the first thing I'm hearing is everybody's terrified, right? Because nobody really understands it, and all of us are in learning mode right now for sure. And a lot of our customers, like certainly the financial services, they banned it, right? They've just banned it until we can figure it out. Like we're going to ban it. No, if they think their employees aren't actually doing what you just did, which is scanning all the reports in and summarizing it, they're crazy. Of course, you're doing that. At Qlik World, which is our big user conference in Las Vegas, what we demonstrated, Qlik working with generative AI in a very safe way. And I think that people are looking for ways to introduce it in a very non-threatening way that can be value added. And the way that we think about that is the analytics, you do all of your analytics in your governed, secure kind of corporate environment where you control things. And then the last mile, you can use generative AI to augment that experience, right? So take the analytics and put our narrative around it using ChatGPT. Or the other way, which is we demonstrated where ChatGPT demonstrated inputs into an analytics model. So in this case, it was an insurance company, and it just asked ChatGPT to kind of recount the 10 biggest natural disasters in Florida, right? And that was just an easy input. So it was a way to kind of introduce NLP into an end user experience, pull the data in so it's safe because you know that where you got that data, your data is not going anywhere. You're taking public domain data in. And so that's the starting off point, which is give me some safe ways to introduce this in, and then hurry up and help me figure this out over the long term. And to Hardeep's point, that's going to take a little bit of time. That's going to take a little bit of time. Everybody wants to do it, but everybody's quite tentative right now because of what it might unleash.
All right, thanks so much, Mike. And perhaps I'll go over to Matt, right? Having met him last week at AWS Summit, he's very passionate. I'm just curious, given that we're hearing, how many people here are actually concerned about generative AI as much as want to use it? Can I show a raise of hand? I'm pretty sure public sector customers, definitely, right? But Matt, we had this conversation last week a lot of times around AI ethics, trust, and safety. What do you think are some of the things that Temus, your team is thinking about as you are exploring and doing that POC and pilot, things that you can put in place, or what is the mechanism, right, or the working backwards to help the team, to help the customers to look at this?
Benny, thanks. Great question. I think one of my questions to everybody was going to be who's excited and who's scared. And I think I knew what the answer was going to be, and I think well tested. So look, when we set up, I was actually having fun today. I was going back, KC, I don't know if you remember this, to my JD that I wrote about 18 months ago, prior to joining Temus. And the strategy was to move from a discriminative to a generative mode. And so I was feeling very, very happy with myself today, having looked at this of 18 months ago. But jokes aside, I think the other key thing is that we also set 3 key services in AI. One being strategy, the other one being around generation and management, but thirdly around safety and ethics. Because essentially we realized right from the beginning that the potential for the power of AI came with a responsibility, right? Because any great technology comes with both the possibility for great good and for great harm. So whether it's a model determining whether you're going to get a loan or not, or an agent with whom you're going to interact, the potential and risk is always going to be there. And I think Hardeep alluded to earlier, there are many other industries and technologies that have similar risks. And so, looking at how you manage those risks, be it, having adversarial approaches, be it, teams that look at how to break the technology, or how to determine whether, ethical guidelines are being followed, or whether, for example, you have multiple approaches to solving the same problem and then compare them. That's a classical one in airlines. And if you're those who've flown an Airbus, typically there are at least 3 or 4 computers all calculating your trajectory in parallel and comparing notes. So they use a lot of consensus. So there are a lot of, should we say, well-proven engineering techniques that can be applied towards taking a technology that's otherwise problematic and have high risks, but nonetheless turn that round towards good. So I think it's good that we're all scared, because I think the opportunity for us to manage it starts with that concern, starts with a question, and starts with a, should we say, a restlessness towards looking at the downsides and managing for it. But I think as we do that, we shouldn't be overwrought with the risk, because equally there are a massive amount of possibilities for good. One I'd perhaps call out would be medicine. Right? There are vast amounts of research done, vast amounts of drugs that are available today that are now being repurposed. So people are finding drugs that perhaps are already certified, but potentially can have other therapeutic effects. Now, the ability of an AI to actually go through the vast amount of medication and look at potential alternative uses is massive. And there are many other use cases. And so I think we should view this as an opportunity towards advancing our humanity rather than the opposite. And I think one of the other big opportunities is to really restore humanity. Right? We've all been marketed by large corporations that treat us as a stereotype. And this technology really offers us the opportunity to become much more personal again, is to recapture our humanity. And I think that's a great opportunity for us.
All right, thanks so much, Matt. So often in the panel, I hate it when it's just us talking. So perhaps now take a break, right? Does anybody want to share in terms from your personal journey or what your organization is doing with regards to the areas of generative AI you're exploring, and what you're afraid of, or what the leadership has actually challenged the team to think about? Anyone?
So I'm with Singapore Management University. So I think in the last couple of months, if not the year, I think this topic has been constantly on topic of discussion at the management meetings. I think anything unknown creates fear. So I think that's the first thing. So I was also thinking about this topic from the persona of different people, right? So in the universities, first and foremost, from the perspective of the students, the undergraduate, the postgraduate. In fact, all these generative AI, it's good for them because now somebody can write their paper. And in fact, other than the last mile, it's the first mile for them. If I can get ChatGPT and say, write this topic for me for discussion, and the draft comes out. At least I have a draft. I just have to learn how to paraphrase smartly, add in a little bit of facts, and dang, I have a new paper, right? Without me having to write from the beginning. So if I take the persona of the student, that's good. If I take the persona of the lecturers, that's bad. Because now everybody has just upvalued the basics of writing. In the past, you can differentiate between the very good students and the bad students. Now you can't, because everybody has a baseline of ChatGPT and everybody starts off with the same draft. How do you differentiate really who is really good and who is not? So from the perspective of the lecturers, they're scared. Now, I can't really know. And what if their results and the paper isn't better than what I am capable of teaching, right? So there's a lot of fear on their part. And then how do I mark who is an A and who is not an A anymore? Depends on how smart you are at paraphrasing, right? Or adding in new facts. So I think the Minister of Education has already come out and say, do not fear, we are going to embrace it. Instead of banning, he says, well, this is new technology, embrace it. Learn to mount above it and then figure out what is a better way to grade people, right? So I think that's the call. So the lecturers have no choice because it's already been said out there that you have to embrace it. They have to find a way to embrace it. Then the persona or the third persona of the researchers. So in the past, researchers takes about 3, 4, 5 years, generally 5 years to get your PhD. Now, with all this smart AI out there, do you really need 5 years? Maybe it should be 3 years. Maybe you're good enough because a lot more research. Last time they used to troll the internet. Okay, before that there were books. They have to read, they fly around to get information. Now with all these smart AI, in fact, you don't even need a library. Somebody is doing the work for you, search the internet, and give you a lot more information and research before you have to do it yourself. So by right, that takes a lot of unproductive time out of this entire research, right? So actually, it can be a huge enabler. But universities are still struggling to find out what does that mean. So by right, if I'm a smart researcher, now I ask ChatGPT to write all this research for me, troll the internet for me. Actually, I can still tell you I need 5 years, but I spent 3 years on the beach and I spent 2 years writing my paper. That sounds really good to me, but that is a huge cost to the university. So of course, in my role that I just joined, I'm also trying to put my hands around it. So what do I want is I want more money, right? So if the shorter it is, the more we can get out of it. And if it can be a smarter way to enable us to actually teach in a better way. Because really, universities are all about knowledge. If knowledge are more readily available, by right, it should change the whole model of how we operate. Degree courses may not be 3-4 years. Could it be shorter? Research PhD could be shorter. Then I can churn more people out as PhD. And if the whole world has a lot more PhD and postgrad students, then a degree might mean nothing anymore. So I think a lot of questions are being unanswered, and we are constantly talking about which way should we move, because as much as there's a lot of information out there and new things are coming on board, but we don't know what is the nth degree it can go to, how much we can stretch it, and how much we can even make the best out of it for the benefit. So I think that's kind of where we stand, and it continues to be a topic of discussion again and again. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks so much, Yvonne.
Right, so the question about fear, do we have fear? Obviously. I think it's a resounding yes. So I can, in fact, ask many of you, would you trust ChatGPT to actually analyze your test results and your scans and tell you what your problem is? Right? I guess you know the answer. Then again, I agree with Yvonne. It's actually different personas. I think considerations are different. Coming from a patient standpoint, we would definitely need lead time for people to start to trust, okay, what the doctors are saying, how they are using generative AI in their work. Some patients, I think the more skeptical one would say, hey, is it based on your own judgment, based on your own expertise, or do you actually use generative AI to actually diagnose me? Right. I would say for sure we can't just take whatever ChatGPT tells us, and then as a clinician, I'm not a clinician to be very honest, I'm a digital person, take the results at face value and just convey it to the patient. So there is still definitely validations that's needed. The question is, how much validation do we need to put in place? While we know that generative AI is going to actually help us a lot in productivity, but again, what about the effort that we need to do in terms of validations? And it keeps learning. So if something keeps learning, then we have to keep validating, right? So, of course, you have, I think in the past, we all know what Google doctors are. And you have someone who, a family members who are sick. And then you all of a sudden, everybody, the father, the mother, the niece, aunt, all become Google doctors and tell you what you're supposed to eat, what you're supposed to do. And so you can imagine what's going to happen. Now you will have ChatGPT doctors coming to you and say, oh, this is what ChatGPT says, right? And I do foresee there may be patients or even the public who will say, hey, based on my results, I actually feed it to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT says this, which is probably against, or it may be against what the doctors has diagnosed or what the doctors have recommended. So those are probably some of the many considerations that we need to have. And the question is, how do we prepare ourselves as a professional? Because as Yvonne has mentioned, the kids are getting smarter, right? Instead of 5 years, you have people coming out graduating in 2 years. So people are getting smarter. But how do we keep up with the pace? Yeah.
Thanks, Joanna.
Hi, I'm Shivram from Olam Agri. So in our organization, I'd just like to talk about how we are looking at this whole thing. We are working on an analytics platform, a modern analytic platform, which can set the base for us to explore new areas. I think a lot of what you talked about, Hardeep, is in our minds. The way we are approaching it is we're trying to take small use cases and looking at it from a safety perspective. And I think when you look at safety, there are two things that are of concern to us. One is the chance that a wrong result or a wrong information is provided to the requester of the information. Other is information that we don't want to be communicated to someone gets communicated to the others. So we are concerned about both these aspects of safety. So we've identified specific use cases, a few things like Copilot. I believe it can really improve the performance of developers. Right. In fact, as we speak, we actually use ChatGPT to reduce the time that a query took from more than 9 minutes to less than 2 minutes. Right. So these are, I think, small use cases that can help out. Another area that we are working on is can we have ChatGPT auto respond to emails? Right. Given the history of the email. The user just has to say how many words the response has to be, what is the tone in which they want to respond, and what are the key points that need to be covered. And then ChatGPT comes up with a response that can be looked at, modified, and sent. Talking about structured and unstructured data, right? We have a lot of structured data. Today, the way that we query on that structured data is very traditional. In fact, I would say it is very bad. In that sense, are we able to query in English and get results out of these structured data? So these are 2 or 3 use cases that we've taken up, and considering these 2 aspects of safety, we're trying to explore, make small use cases, and if it works out well, then we expand usage of such tools, right? So that's what we're trying to do in our organization.
All right, thanks, Shivran. Anyone else?
Hi, hello everyone. So maybe I'll just state my stand on generative AI first. Am I excited about it? Yes, definitely, a lot. Am I worried about it? A little bit. But I would say that I'm actually, more worried about those who are, really thinking too much and in the process trying to stop and slow down this whole progress a bit too excessively. I think this whole generative AI, ChatGPT and the likes, it's just a car that's going to keep on going. I definitely support painting the road, putting up road signs and so on as the car is driving. But I think if you don't hop into the car, you're probably going to miss the whole boat, right? And I think sometimes when you look at generative AI, maybe it's in the name itself, right? The fear and the worry around it is actually not so uniform. When we talk about generative, we always think about hallucination and so on. That sounds scary. Using ChatGPT for medical diagnosis is going to be quite a bad thing, quite scary. But if you really think about how ChatGPT can benefit you in many other ways, productivity and so on, it actually, can isn't that bad. We recently ran like an ideathon across the whole of government. 130 ideas came in, right? So we were trying to classify, what all these ideas are. About 1/3 of it is in information retrieval, Q&A, that kind of things, which is quite prone to hallucination. So we have to be careful there, right? But if you think of the other task that an LLM or generative AI, ChatGPT can help you with, rewriting, translation, summary, role-playing, brainstorming, I think all these things comes with a lot more benefits than it comes with risk. So I think when we look at generative AI, we probably need to sort of segment it. Those parts that's a bit more trickier, worrisome, I think we do need to have more safeguards. But I think for the larger part of it, this is really something that raises the water level for actually everyone. And I think this is really an opportunity whereby not just the academics, not just the professionals can benefit from it, but really everyone within the workforce, top to bottom. Yeah, thanks.
All right, thanks so much, Joseph. It sounds like everybody's cup half full, which is fantastic, right? Despite all that we are reading, top of news about the hallucination, whatever, I think everybody comes with that context. Perhaps now, shining back to you, Geoff, do you see any certain trends in sub-verticals where the adoption will be more, where we're seeing a lot more adoption, especially when, for example, there's already auto ML in Qlik. Where do you think might be some of the areas that will be in a better position to test drive some of it, and how can it be applied to data and analytics?
Yeah. Well, if we just go back a couple of years or so to the pandemic, I'd say the pandemic acted as a catalyst to really accelerate digitization for a lot of our customers that we work with across the region. I think initially a lot of that was around cloud modernization. And they were dealing with customers were dealing with things like remote work, et cetera. I think now that foundation for them to scale is in place, they're turning their attention more to, augmented AI solutions. So we're seeing it right across Asia. I would say in terms of verticals, certainly industries or sectors with massive amounts of data like telco, retail, manufacturing, they're going to be looking heavily at these technologies, already are. Better insights into things like supply chain is an obvious one. And then even with the recent US banking crisis and increased interest rates, et cetera, financial services would be another one where banks and financial institutions are not only looking at AI and investing in AI as a way of getting better, the customer experience, but also regulatory requirements now. So it's really right across verticals and countries. We really see it though as something. It's not a rip and replace thing. I think for a lot of customers, it's really additive or incremental to what they're already doing. Allowing them to do things like you were talking about, shifting, their employees into higher value. So the humans are always going to be there; they're not going away. But I think what they focus on might be different, or just giving them better, deeper insights into their customers. So that's what we're seeing.
All right, thanks so much, Geoff. I definitely hope I won't be replaced one day. I hope to up-level my game, right? That seems to be the trend. But now, KC, going back to you, because you're obviously Qlik's partner in crime today, right? And Hardeep had the final slide that talks about how Temus, you guys were formed to help solve digital problems. And Qlik obviously is one of the solutions. What do you envision the partnership will bring, and how can you help the audience here solve their problem?
Sure, happy to answer that. Thanks, Penny. Maybe I can have as a reaction to some of the comments made earlier.
Go for it.
And Temus, some of you may be aware, we run a technology talent conversion program. We take people without any background in tech, and then in 4 months we train them to be full-fledged developers. Our first program is .NET. Second program, which is now running, is in low code. Somewhere halfway through the first program, ChatGPT emerged. And the first reaction of all the trainers was, how can we stop them from using ChatGPT to cheat in their programming, right? And I mean, still working through that process, but I'm old enough to remember when calculators were first introduced, right? And the first reaction is you can't use calculators for exams because that's cheating. Today, you formulate the problem, they use the calculators and solve it, right? They've moved to a higher level. And the question is, how do we use this approach? But I think the concern around generative AI is also an understanding of how it works. And that's where probably people are most concerned. How does it make decisions about a diagnosis? Is it better for it to be, in a way, supervised, meaning you validate it with professional doctors before you gain enough confidence and comfort? And I think it's part of that process as well. Now, Matt and I are fortunate to own Teslas. Tesla comes with a feature that's called autopilot, right? Which is, well, not quite autonomous driving, but you can actually let it navigate and keep the speed. The first time I tried it, I was terrified because I was like, this car is driving itself and I'm worried it might crash into the car in front of me. But after a while, you build enough confidence and you let it go, right? So maybe that's the other concept, that you need to build sufficient confidence. You let it try out, but your two ends are always on the wheel, and you'll make sure, right? Of course, we have heard all sorts of horror stories about people who decide to text on the phone while they let the Tesla drive themselves, and then that's a problem. I guess the other interesting idea is about looking at adjacencies which are less critical. And would I trust it with my medical diagnosis? No. If I were to look at agriculture, maybe. And many of the lessons from agriculture may be applicable eventually to healthcare. So just some concepts that we might gradually get us there. Now, in terms of how we can partner Qlik, I think it really, the answer is depends on the readiness of the customers and what they're looking for. I can share this, that Temasek is a relatively sophisticated customer. So what they're already doing in terms of this, it's great because what the data that they can access using Qlik SaaS now takes it to the next level, and being able to query with ChatGPT is really game-changing for them. On the other hand, we have clients who come to us and say, I need a data strategy. And they don't even know what data assets they have. I'm not going to name any of those clients because to protect the innocent. But
not anybody here, right?
No, not anybody here. Nobody here, definitely. So then we have to figure out firstly what data assets do they have, right? And how do we unlock the value of those data assets? Are they in silos? How do we put them together? That's the other extreme. We've recently come across clients that say, well, Temus, you guys are great at consulting. But I want you to put your money where your mouth is. You share the gains from when the consulting outcomes. How do we figure out what's the gains, right? And that's where I think the value of data comes in. Being able to have that dashboard which shows, right? To pick up firstly the right data metrics for us to measure. That's how we can then put a credible case. And you need to define those upfront. You can't define them along the way because likewise, our clients also will try and figure out how to pay us less, right? So that's the other problem statement I'm solving. But I think there are many, many opportunities which we are very excited about.
All right. Thanks, KC. That's a good one. I've never thought about this way, but now I think you just planted a seed amongst everybody here on how they look at compensation or when they are looking at consulting engagements. Okay. I think we still have about 5-10 minutes. I just want to open up the floor. Any questions for the panelists here? Like, don't be shy. Ask them all the hard questions. Matt is all ready. You can look at him. Yeah, I know.
No, I was just going to offer Joanna a thought for contemplation. As a patient, right, we value doctors and consultants with experience. And typically you have a premium for the doctor with the greatest number of patients, with the greatest number of years of experience, right? With the best reputation. Now imagine there was a consultant with 10 times the amount of experience or 100 times the amount of experience who had witnessed every condition in every country and every patient in the world that could answer a question, the super consultant. Wouldn't we want to buy that? So, you take this thing of fear, and surely they're not sophisticated enough to take that on. But the potential to actually learn from the whole of the world's, every patient in the world's condition and their treatment and how it was successful, and then apply it to a patient perhaps from South America who has a condition that has some treatment that's found, applying the same one-to-one in Russia or one in Outer Mongolia, right? And the ability to take that expertise and to share it amongst the whole of humanity is a tremendous opportunity. And that's the sort of case that's now possible that wasn't possible before, right?
It was tried, right? So if you
remember,
sure. IBM Watson is a great example of this gone wrong, right? Because they actually made the claim that they could diagnose imaging, x-rays and cancer better than doctors could. They were wrong. And it actually set AI back a couple of years, right? That was a multi-billion-dollar mistake by IBM. So I think you're absolutely right, Matt. But again, it's back to this: we have to validate it.
Have to be proved it.
Improved, absolutely, before you start playing with people's lives, right? So
absolutely right.
Oh, that's reinforced learning, right? Actually, I think the example that Matt quoted has been done in radiography, where I think from AI perspective, they can do it faster. So we can actually have more data points. So instead of doing it from scratch, how can you assist the radiographer to diagnose faster? I think that's the level, again, going on to back to the fact that how humans, we need to up our game. We are not going to be replaced by drones or AI, but matter of fact, we can be supported and facilitated so that we can solve greater problems at better scale. So it's a matter of how do we touch on the fine lines, right? So all good comments here, like Matt and, good example about IBM. That's an unfortunate case we all remember, but we have moved on. Any other questions here? All right.
So I have a question for which we don't have an answer today, but I'd like to have your thoughts on it. With regard to structured data, tools like ChatGPT works when there's a lot of feedback that has gone in and it has learned. But when it comes to structured data within our organization, there's probably a small set of data, and this is never known. This is not known outside our organization, right? Some of the terms used in our organization are specific to us, right? It's not a generic term, right? Given that, how would a tool like ChatGPT or an AI tool understand what is it that the people are asking and work with that relatively limited set of data to be able to give meaningful outputs? And also, mind you, given the reach that some of these dashboards and outputs have, people have very limited patience with it going wrong. So therefore, it better be right the first time it reaches someone in the senior management. So what are the thoughts of this group with respect to making sure that this tool works appropriately before it is released for general use, especially at the senior management levels?
I think I'll have a first go at that and perhaps offer to Hardeep also. Great question, thank you. So look, I think the most important point to make is that GPT and ChatGPT are tools, right? And they're in infancy. OpenAI is a company that was founded in December 2015, right? Just coming to seven plus years, right? Not many of us would trust our diagnosis to a doctor aged 7 years old, right? Nor to running our companies. And I think we should treat ChatGPT with similar care, right? It's a very precocious and very capable 7-year-old, but it's a 7-year-old, right? So it's the first observation. The second one is that the way these language models are being used today, at least most of us are using them, is in their trained form, right? And single shot mode. So we ask a question, come back and answer. Then we ask another question. So I was actually using GPT today for some research. I asked a question, give me something inspirational. It gave me a list. I said, that's a load of rubbish. I like the last one, but the other ones are complete rubbish. I literally wrote, these are rubbish. And said, I'm sorry, the reply came back, and then gave a whole bunch of other links that were much better, right? So by iterating prompts, right? You could actually get much better responses, which is how they were trained with, I think Hardeep referred with reinforcement learning with human feedback. So I gave it human feedback, and during that conversation it gave. So if you think that through and you give this tool a tool itself, so for example, ability to query a schema, ability to generate SQL, ability to see the response in the same way that a human analyst would do, you can, over a number of steps, analyze your own data, right? So how would you, for example, query this table? Okay, you explain the table, you get a set of descriptions, you do some sample out for 100 values. A human analyst knows how to do this, but guess what? So does ChatGPT, right? If you go and ask this question, it'll tell you the steps. How would you analyze a table? It will generate your list. If you then take the items on that list and do them, right, and then summarize them, actually you'll get a very intelligent answer. So I'm not sure you've followed a system called AutoGPT, but these technologies are now starting to do this in a multi-step way. So they're using tools, they're using it in multiple iterations, and then summarizing the responses. And we're already starting to see, I think as Hardeep meant, emergent capabilities by using a set of tools plus an iterative approach of using this, this chat technology to address such questions. So although the language wasn't trained on your particular data set or our particular data set, like a human analyst, you can, through a series of queries and iterating through those, actually produce quite a lot of intelligence. So I think we're starting to see approaches to that, but I think it's early days.
Yeah, so I'll just like to add on to that. So what you had talked about, or what Matt was talking about, is what we call as in-context learning. Model weights are fixed. Model has seen something in the training data, and you provide additional context and then allow the model to paraphrase the answer from the context given. That's the first approach that we are using. Again, limited usage, but you can still get good output out of that. The other approach is where you fine-tune a model. This is where you will have to take something. Now, obviously, you won't get your hands on GPT-4 in this case. You'll have to take an alternative open source data, and you'll have to fine tune it on your data set, whatever organization data you have. And this model would be hosted in your environment. It is your model which you are going to form. So if you have heard about Bloomberg GPT, which Bloomberg basically trained from scratch internally, it's going to be something similar. You are going to take a pre-trained model, you are going to fine tune it in your organization. This model is going to be very contextualized to your context. And this kind of a model can actually be at a much better stage than just an in-context learning model. So I think that's the approach.
All right. So thank you so much. And fortunately, we are coming to the top of the roundtable. But I'm sure if you guys can stay around, the panelists will still be around for questions. In fact, you guys might be more free to ask questions, right? But I just want to do a very quick recap, right? Because how can we let this gentleman get away with just a straightforward questions? Can each of you provide a key aspiration of what do you think are some of the predictions you have that will happen in the next, by 2024? What do you think would generative AI come true with? What are your aspirations? What are your hope? What do you think you will be working on that will come true? All right, starting with, all right, perhaps from Jeff, pass the mic, and when we do from left to right.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
The aspiration for
Generative AI.
Yeah. Look, I'm given my role, I'm going to put a customer spin on it, and I think it's going to be, my aspiration is that it really helps, customers like the ones around the table here, solve some of their most challenging problems, and I hope we can partner with them on that. So it would be customer benefit, and then obviously community benefit for all of us, and our children. Some of the things we've talked about that go beyond just business. So, yeah.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah. It's going to get harder as we go all the way down the list to come up with original thoughts. So I'll be. No, I thought the calculator analogy was brilliant because it's kind of where we are, right? Everyone thought, we're not going to teach math in school anymore because we inherited calculators. Nothing could be further from the truth. And I think that's the aspiration I really want in a year from now. I want everybody to calm down, right? And really kind of embrace it and understand that it's going to evolve like every other technology evolved. And my aspiration is that really smart people who are in the industry like all of you, your jobs are never more important to the world than they are right now in helping to interpret and understand this, and that we all just take the lead in terms of finding a way to introduce this in a very ethical and safe way.
I'm not going to answer your question, Binny, because it gets more and more difficult. So
See, you are
So,
always
give me a
grabbing your
couple.
way out of questions.
So I'll choose to say actually that I'm very excited about the opportunities with generative AI. It'll allow us humans to up our game, as you say, and especially for a small labor-constrained country like Singapore, it should work to our benefit. But what we as individuals do about it is our own choice. One of the reasons why Temus is investing in this technology talent conversion program is because it allows people to pursue a career that they thought was out of reach. And it's about building agility in our workforce, which is very much needed. We can't decide that we are done with university and then we continue living off what we learned 20, 30 years ago. And I think this is necessary. And I'm very confident. Singapore, we project at least 1.2 million digital jobs over the next 3 years. We only have 40,000 babies a year. Less than 10% of them study computer science, right? So the only way we can pursue digital careers is through this relearning, unlearning, and doing that.
Thanks, KC.
So I'm going to give a very roundabout answer to your question, but I'll try. Look, the humans have been on the planet for about 200,000 years, right? Up until about 200 years, right, almost all of us lived on the land. We were farmers, right, either hunters or farmers. And everybody worries about technology taking away our jobs. Ultimately, technology did take away our jobs. It was actually farming, right? But I think very few of us would come to the conclusion that being, forced off the land, and doing backbreaking work for 12 hours a day is a step backwards. I think we all would gladly say that our quality of life is better, it's longer and better than it was 200 years ago. I think this is a revolutionary technology that's going to change our society. I don't know where it's going to go. I think I'd be very arrogant and rather foolish if I said I did. I don't. But what I do hope is that technology will allow us to take forward our society, to make it richer, to improve our health, and most importantly, to connect as humans. Because I think one of the real powers of this technology is to understand every human as an individual and really interact with us and allow us to connect in a much more human way. And that's what I hope.